Good morning, Prep fathers and sons, and welcome to the Father-Son Super Bowl Breakfast Reflection, Super Bowl 55, 2021, a most unique COVID year. I'm thrilled to be with you this morning to offer my first reflection as president of Fairfield Prep, and I want to give thanks to all those who made this day possible. A special thanks to our advancement office, to Mr. Remigio, Mr. Mosquita, Mr. DeRosa, and all those who made this morning possible to be with you virtually. Would also like to offer special and additional thanks to our campus ministry team and Mr. Elliot Gualtieri, our Jesuit community for supporting us in liturgy today, and certainly to the Fathers Club for making this day possible. We appreciate your support. So we come together this morning in most unusual times, a Super Bowl Sunday in COVID-19, and I come to you as a father and a prep dad. I have 4 sons, 3 of whom attended the prep. Paul in the class of 15, Matthew came for his freshman year, my son John is at John Carroll, and of course Joseph is in the class of 2023. So I know intimately what it means to be a member of the prep father-son community and to be part of our great prep tradition. In my life as a theology teacher at Fairfield Prep, I used to talk to the boys about what we call the Ignatian spiritual warrior training. And this goes back all the way to the tradition of Ignatius himself, in which he taught those young Jesuits to be men for others, to be men who cultivated mind, body, and spirit. And I think those themes are relevant today as we think about Super Bowl Sunday. So by birth, I'm a Hoosier. I was born in Indiana, and there are 2 things that are the religion in Indiana, and that's Indiana basketball and Notre Dame football. So really the only Notre Dame football anecdote that I like to refer to is the story of Rudy Rudiker. Many of you know that great movie, Rudy, about Rudy Rudiker, who through incredible tenacity and hard work scrapped his way onto the second string of the Notre Dame football team for his senior year in 1975. He was thrown in for 1 minute and 30 seconds at the end of his senior year final game against Georgia Tech. And he made a sack and made the history books at Notre Dame football for life. He's the only football player at Notre Dame to have ever been carried off the field. But that story is not only a story about tenacity and discipline, but it's a story of brotherhood, because Rudy became a great example to his brothers through his hard work, his discipline, and his dedication. I think this connects to our own mission at Fairfield Prep and the Ignatian tradition. I used to remind my own boys in the theology classroom that I suspect Coach Hellstern didn't give you options if maybe you'd run the plays today, or maybe you'd show up for practice, or maybe you'd do your workouts. So prep men are no strangers to hard work. And if we think about the hard work that our boys do on the field and in the classroom, why would it be any different for us in our spiritual lives? And I think it's one of the great lessons that we learn from St. Ignatius, that we apply as much passion and discipline to our inner life of prayer and our life of service as we do in every other thing in our lives at prep. So why can that help us in this time of pandemic? Undoubtedly, each of us has our own individual connection of the COVID-19 hardships that we've experienced since last March. Every one of our families has been impacted in the Prep family by COVID-19, whether we've sadly lost a loved one to this terrible virus or have had to completely upturn our lives and our routines to protect those we love as men and women for others. We're thoughtful and mindful of all the sacrifices you have made as fathers and sons and families at Fairfield Prep and for Fairfield Prep. One of my great Jesuit teachers at Xavier University used to remind us that perspective in this life is the most important thing to have, and the easiest thing to lose is perspective. So I wanted to offer just a little bit of perspective in prep history about this moment of COVID-19. I hold in my hands here today a picture of the first graduating class of Fairfield Prep from 1943. What's most notable about this picture, aside from the fact that it's only 8 men on Bellarmine Hill in black and white, is that one of these members of the class is not in his white dinner jacket. He's wearing a military uniform. Why is he wearing a military uniform? Because of course at the founding of Prep in 1942, we were in the middle of the Second World War. So no doubt, at the founding of our school in 1942, life was not that much different than it is today in COVID-19. Young men were going to war. Families were sacrificing and losing loved ones. Gas was being rationed 2 gallons a family in Fairfield County, and incredible sacrifices were being made as a nation and as a region for a greater cause and for the greater good. Undoubtedly, 2021 looks more like 1941 than we could have ever imagined at Fairfield Prep. So the question becomes, what do we do with these times? As a theology teacher, I often refer to stories and movies. So another movie that I think of besides Rudy is the great Lord of the Rings trilogy of J.R. Tolkien. You may recall in the Lord of the Rings that the hero Frodo is carrying the Ring of Power, his hero's journey where he has to destroy that ring. And he's sitting in the mines of Moria with Gandalf the wizard, and he says to Gandalf in the midpoint of his journey, "I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish this burden had never come to me." And Gandalf says to him, "So do all who live to see such times. But we do not choose what happens to us in this life. Rather, we choose how we respond with the time that we are given." So we choose how we respond with the times we are given. And certainly that's our call during COVID-19. Certainly it was the call of the young men of Fairfield Prep of 1943 in times of World War. Certainly it was the call of St. Ignatius of Loyola, who never expected to be wounded by a cannonball in the Battle of Pamplona, and then choose the way of Christ and choose the way of the Jesuits. How we respond to times of difficulty and challenge are the measure of who we are as fathers, as sons, and as men of prep. The great author John Steinbeck was once asked, "When does a boy become a man?" Steinbeck thought for a moment and answered, "When a man is needed." When does a boy become a man? When a man is needed. And I would suggest to all of us as fathers and sons in this moment that young men are needed at Fairfield Prep to do that thing we call the magis, or the more, the greater thing. And in such times, we dig down deep into our well of spiritual discipline, to the lessons that we've learned in the brotherhood at Prep, to our faith, to seek God in all things, and most of all to remember that our fundamental mission at Prep is not for ourselves, but it's for others. We form all of the gifts that God has given us and all the talents that we have to give them away. And certainly in your families, you know that. You've seen your own fathers sacrifice and grandfathers sacrifice here at Prep and in your lives. And so this is a great time for father and son bonds and the bonds of brotherhood at Fairfield Prep. We so wish we could be here together today to be celebrating Mass and brotherhood and community, but we'll be back here again soon. I encourage you today to enjoy your bonds of fatherhood and sonship and brotherhood at Prep. Enjoy the game and hail Prep.